thank you all for coming. So, I listened to this morning, ironically, it was the first time that I had met Fact, our CFO of Latin America, and I thought he did a really good job and had some very good insights about the role of the financial professional and CFO, particularly if that role was going to continue to expand and grow and develop career opportunities and really focus on growth, that the role of the CFO professional is going to have to move beyond just the same old lagging and financial indicators that we've been looking at for a long time. And when you look at that, the health of the business, the indicators of the health of the business have not really changed, that we've been trained to look at, have not really changed for more than a century. I mean, the balance sheet in its current form, got its current form in, I think it was 1868, something like that, right? But yet the amount of data that we have at our fingertips that indicates the relative health of the business has changed dramatically, right? And not only has it changed dramatically, but the manner in which people want to interact with that data, as well as the type of individual that wants to interact with that data, has changed so dramatically. And I think these numbers really help illustrate that story. So when you look at it, Gartner says by 2014 that 50% of your employees will have extremely high expectations around analytic capabilities within the business. Take that to 2020, that number jumps to 75% of your employees, right? And what that indicates is that there is a massive shift in the base of decision making that is occurring right in front of our eyes. And what that says is that there's going to be, the shift of decision making is going to move beyond just having a few select key individuals in the executive suites making decisions, but that's going to be, the base of that decision making is going to be pushed out further into the organization as these individuals become more empowered. Now, if you contrast that with where we're at today, and most of the polls that you take that indicate that the employees in your companies today, particularly in Fortune 500 companies, will say 10% of those individuals will say they have access to the information that they need in order to do their job in a really effective way. That may not sound like a big difference, but think about how much work and effort you go through to get information into just the 10% hands. You contrast this with going to 75%, and you look at somebody like a P&G, it's like giving information to 10,000, 13,000 people roughly today to almost 100,000 people in just a few short years. For Walmart, it's like going from 220,000 employees who need access to information today to going to 1.5 million in a few years. That's pretty scary, right? Now, combine that with the fact that it's pretty generally accepted that the amount of data is increasing at a rate of 80% every year, and it only seems like that is going up, continuing to go up even more dramatically. And what that creates is you've got this increased base of users, you've got the data increasing, and what that creates is this flashpoint in the middle. Right? When you look at data increasing, right, that's everything from, the amount of data increasing is everything from a multi-million-dollar transaction to a Facebook blog or a Twitter blogger or somebody blogging about this event, right? Or, as I was just with the guys from Redbox, or it's one of your, I love that, right? You're a $2 billion company, $1 at a time. $1 at a time. It's a lot of dollars, right? So the amount of data that's being creating out there is extremely dramatic. I mean, I look at it even in my own personal life. My dad, I mentioned to you, right? I grew up in Southern Illinois. My dad's never really seen a computer or used a computer much of it in his lifetime. I gave him, for his 75th birthday, we gave him an iPad. In the last 2 months, my dad has created more data than in the last 2 months of his life than he did his previous 75 years of existence. Right? I mean, that's a pretty massive, when you start to think about it in those contexts, and I've got my 3-year-old who, she shakes the picture frames, right? She's like, this thing's not working. Alright, so when you look at it from that standpoint, the combination of the user proliferation and the amount of data that's being created creates a tremendous opportunity out in the marketplace. And so we look at that and say, okay, that's great. We've seen this in our we've seen this once before in the consumer life, right? When the internet created this massive explosion of content, and we were all very hungry to consume that. It took a little while for our expectations, which were set maybe in the late 90s or the early 2000s, to catch up to where we are now, where I start to panic right now because I set my phone over there on the table and it's not on my person, right? So the expectations that we have are dramatically different than where they were just a few years ago in our personal life. Now you contrast that with where we are at in our business life. The expectations are becoming exponentially higher, yet what the business is delivering and allowing our employees to have access to is still falling way behind. I use the example all the time. I go to a city, as I mentioned, I travel all the time, right? I land somewhere, I forgot my iPhone charger. What do? I don't go to the concierge at the hotel desk anymore. I go to Google Maps, Google, it says, okay, there's a Walgreens down the street. Go down there, you can buy an iPhone charger at 8 o'clock at night. But I'm not happy with that, right? I want to know what's the fastest route to get there. Maybe I want to price shop it and see if there's a better place or lower cost to get it. But I also want to know if there's a restaurant nearby. Right? I want to know if there's a restaurant nearby so I can send my team, tell them to come there and meet me. Contrast that with what I have in my business life. Now, this is, I do work for SAP, so this is a dirty little secret, right? But I go to our Palo Alto facility, and it's a campus, and I've got a meeting in Lombardi conference room in building 3. And it takes me like an hour to find this place, right? I got to ask people, there's no way, I got to ask, I get sent to go to this building, go to that building, and certainly it's not going to tell me if there were any services nearby, like if there's a printer, or a fax machine, or a copier, or a coffee maker, or anything like that. So my expectations, personal life, dramatically different than what I have in the business life. Combine that with the fact that we all have an aging workforce problem out there, right? As the workforce continues to age, our new workforce coming online has a completely different set of expectations than what we grew up with, right? I thought when I was in college, at the very end of college, I got an email address, right? And I used it a couple of times, I think, while I was in college. So I just started growing up with email. And then I go back to my daughter, who is shaking the picture. So the expectations are totally different. And even outside of just the aging workforce problem that we have, those people are our consumers. And we need to be able to connect with them in a whole, and they have a different set of expectations in the way that they interact with companies. So back to the old lagging indicators, right? I mentioned that we are paying attention to only the lagging indicators that are out there when there's this entirely new host of signals that have been generated. But these new signals, not only do they create a tremendous amount of opportunity for us to take advantage of, but they also cause a lot of noise in the system as well. And we have to be careful that we help this new base of decision makers that are coming online to isolate the signals that are going to be most impactful to them and deliver the highest amount of value. So we want to help cut through the noise, isolate that, and provide to them, rather than simply just massive amounts of data, we want to provide to them intelligent data. We want to give them the ability to focus on those new signals that are going to be most impactful and most important to them. So I talked a little bit about the decision-making process. And the decision-making process overall hasn't really changed. I think this is supposed to be a bill, but I like just putting the whole thing up here, right? The 3 fundamental tenets of decision-making is you want to be informed, you want to align that decision with some objective, and then you want to adapt, right? When you look at that from where we're at here today, the informing, aligning, adapting is not only business intelligence, it's not only enterprise performance management or governance, risk, and compliance, it's the combination and it's the bringing together of all 3 of those with these new signals that are also out there that can really drive and impact the business. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to start reporting Twitter information on your SEC filings anytime soon. But what I am saying is that if every one of your sales managers on a daily basis had the ability to understand customer sentiment and what their customers were thinking about your business, that might not have an impact on the way that they're dealing with customers and your brand out in the marketplace. So it may not be as impactful as the balance sheet or the income statement, but it's also a very good leading indicator. When you look at and talking about the adapting component of this, and I think about that in a way with financial performance management information, financial information, but also some of that new data that's out there. When you made the comment this morning about BP, that kind of struck me, right? And you look at just it almost collapsed a stalwart company, global company, by one event. I am certain that they wish that the CFO wishes that they would have been collecting and or monitoring and really processing all of the data that's coming off of the wellhead, right? Coming off the wellhead, coming off the rig, and would they have been provided some forewarning that this situation was going to happen? Or maybe even worse, they were provided forewarning that this was going to happen, but the systems weren't in place and the checks and balances weren't in place to provide that information up to the appropriate individuals to make the decisions based on, you know what, yes, it's going to cost us X amounts of millions of dollars to shut down this platform and correct the problem proactively, but based on the risk profile that's associated with that, we made, this is an easy decision. It's a decision that we have to make. So when you look at that machine-to-machine data that's coming out there being combined with the financial data that all of you care about here in the room so very much, it's a really, really powerful combination. And you can go down the list, whether it's consumer sentiment, whether it's machine data that's being delivered, whether it's data coming off of a Coinstar Redbox machine being sent back to headquarters, whether it's they deal with Lexmark, whether it's information that their printers are sending back. I mean, they've got some really interesting type of predictions that can indicate not only just on their business but on the economy as a whole. It's a very, very powerful combination. So that was what I wanted to kick this off here a little bit. Hopefully open up your minds in terms of looking at the amount of information that's out there as it pertains to the CFO, the Office of Finance, your role, how you can use that information not only to provide you better financial growth, but also look at that and help your revenue and company growth overall.